And we are live. This is Ring the Bell podcast. Actually, there's no number today because it's just a little news update regarding the Fury ESPN situation, and we'll probably discuss a couple of other things that have been in the news. I'm here with my co-host from the main event. How are you, Nathan?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I am very well. No complaints. Chelsea got beat by Man United in the FA Cup, so I was very happy about that. Anthony Joshua signed to fight Miller, as we all knew. That's quite interesting. I'm just kind of going over the press conference and the pushing and the shoving. I haven't actually seen all that yet, but I don't think Miller's got much of a chance in this fight, personally.
Neither do I. I just think he's a big mouth. He's just an idiot.
He's a big lump. It will be hard for AJ to knock him out, but I think he'll break him down and maybe stop him. You know, the referee will stop it standing up at some point because Miller's just too slow on his feet, I think people underrate AJ's boxing ability, but against someone like Miller, he'll really be able to show it off. I think he'll put on a boxing clinic, actually. It's a good fight, though. So, the big news, though, much bigger news than Joshua versus Miller, is Tyson Fury has signed to ESPN for what is reported to be $80 million deal. Crazy news. What do you think about this one?
I think it's a great move by him. It means he can avoid all these dangerous fighters and still make a big payday. He's got brains, hasn't he?
He has, right? But here's the thing, right? So there's different reports. So some are saying it's worth 103 million. Some are saying it's worth 80 million. 80 million pounds, 103 million dollars. Right, that makes sense. What's interesting, though, is obviously everybody's going to want to see him in the big fights. ESPN aren't going to pay him that much money to fight someone shit. And so it's kind of made the complicated heavyweight division even more complicated because now you've got AJ on Sky and DAZN, Fury on BT and ESPN, with Top Rank as his promoter and Warren, and Wilder on Showtime. However, Wilder doesn't have an actual deal with Showtime. Wilder can fight on ESPN or DAZN. But that kind of means that it's going to be Wilder versus Fury or Wilder versus AJ with no... I can't see how Fury and AJ will ever fight each other.
I think he's ruled it out now. But there was also some also that if Wilder doesn't take the fight with him, he could get stripped of his belt. That's what I read.
Yes, I've heard this as well, but I'm not so sure that that's how it will go down because the WBC quite like Deontay Wilder, and I know they've said they'll strip him if they don't accept the purse, if they don't make a deal, but usually it just goes to purse bids, and if it goes to purse bids, you'd think that ESPN with that new money would probably win. I don't know, though. It would be odd for them to sign someone like Tyson Fury and then not win the purse bids. That would be very weird. So I have to imagine that what Frank and ESPN are going to do is not negotiate a deal, let it go to purse bids, and if Wilder still doesn't take the fight, they can make a vacant WBC fight.
That would be a good way, I suppose, but it's not what we really want to see, though, is it?
No, everybody wants the Wilder rematch, but I just think it's possible, but it's less likely because of the ESPN deal. I think there's some other big fights that are likely. Dillian Whyte versus Tyson Fury is very possible because Dillian Whyte is not a DAZN fighter. So there's weird stuff like that where it's going to be a lot of politics and a lot of who's the right guy, who's guy. It's going to be a very weird situation in the heavyweight division for a few months, I think.
But Tyson Fury now has the bulk of the power, doesn't he? Outside of the champions, he has all the power. By the looks of it now.
In some ways, I'd say what he's done is created himself to have more power than Wilder and a similar power to AJ. Because obviously Sky's bigger than BT in the UK, but ESPN is a lot bigger than DAZN in the US. So it means that the Fury AJ fight, if it does happen, it probably has to be 50-50 now. So it is a smart move for Fury in some ways, for sure. But in other ways, you just wonder how is some of these fights going to be made now. It's an odd one. It is a bit of a shame, I think. But it's great for Fury. It's great for his purse, and we'll just have to wait and see what ESPN do. I don't think they're going to let him fight pushovers. We're not going to see Sefa Safiri rematch, for example. I don't think.
Sefa Safiri? Oh dear. Sorry, that's true.
Yeah, I don't think that's the kind of fight we'll see. So hopefully it's going to be good fights. It's going to be big fights. ESPN's a big platform. Let's see where Fury goes from here.
With the sort of fights I think he'll get, there's that other belt which nobody likes to talk about. The WBA have. We talked about it enough, and I don't really want to talk about it again.
Is that the Chara Quendo thing, and that's been postponed again, right?
Quendo pulled out, apparently.
Oh my God! I hope he's forfeited his right for a title shot now, because it's been going on for years, that saga. Right. It just needs to stop. I think that saga's been going on for longer than this channel has existed. No, seriously, I actually think that's true. So that's crazy.
How long have we been going? A year now with this?
Just over, I think. Obviously, we've had spots where we don't do a show for a couple of months and then come back. But yeah, I think it's been about over a year. And the Oquendo, it was Oquendo Briggs before it was Oquendo Char, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this saga has been going on for like 2.5 years now. It's just absurd. It is absurd. No wonder the WBA made an interim belt, because they probably knew that this WBA regular belt was never going to ever be fought for again.
Let me see if I can find the article before we move on.
I saw it somewhere. Stay Too Tough, or someone posted it on Facebook, didn't they? I think I read that earlier. It's funny.
Let me see what else has come up in the last day or so before we move on to the main card.
Yes, for sure.
Something I wanted to address, or did you want to leave that till last?
No, we'll address that first. Billy Joe Saunders has signed to fight for the super middleweight title, 168 pounds. Good comeback fight, because it's for a title at least, but it seems very weird for him to be moving up. And this guy Shefat Isufi, he used to be a cruiserweight.
Have you seen his whole record? I'll send it to you now while I'm here.
I'm on it. I'm on his record. He's 27-3-2, and yeah. So he's fought at super middleweight for a while, but in 2016 he was a light heavyweight, and in 2015 he was a cruiserweight.
Look at his record from the very beginning, and then go up to like 10 fights, and some of his people he's beaten in his in his 11th or 12th fight, he was fighting people on their debuts in in his 15th or 16th fight.
I see that, yeah.
It looks dreadful. But I don't blame him. I mean, I suppose this is karma, isn't it, for the way he lost the belt?
Yes, yeah, I suppose so. I mean, this guy has had some okay wins, and in the WBO, he won the vacant Intercontinental Super Middleweight against David Zagara, and he's defended it twice since then against Rafael Sosa Pintos and Mohamed El Achi. And those aren't bad fighters, but they're not Billy Joe Saunders level, are they? Let's put it that way.
Their records. That kind of says it all.
Yeah. But I mean, David Zagara wasn't too bad. I remember that. And Rafael Sosa Pintos was sort of a gatekeeper. He used to be good, but had a lot of losses in the end of his career. Um, it's not the worst fight in the world. It's good that it's for a title, but you do wonder how the fuck this fella got a title shot, don't you?
It's shocking. That's boxing. You could say the same thing about Andre's opponent, couldn't you? And he
Yes,
fought.
yes, 100%. Andre's opponent gets a little bit of a let off because he was a late last minute replacement.
Yeah.
This isn't a late last minute thing. This is a whole fight camp. No one's pulled out.
But doesn't this highlight the coziness that Frank Warren has had with the WBO for the last 30 years?
Yeah, for sure. Let's go back to BoxRec. I'm just gonna do something really quickly. Like, let's have a look at the top 15 in the middleweight division and let's have a look at super middleweight. Sorry, so let's type in. Yeah, here we go.
Are you sharing that? Are you with people?
No. I won't yet. I will do soon. Okay, but just for now, I'm just gonna look at the top 15 of super middleweight division. So we've got Callum Smith, number 1. Eubank Jr., number 2. I don't know how. Gilberto Ramirez, number 3. Billy Joe Saunders, who has beat Chris Eubank Jr., number 4. That makes 0 sense. Rocky Fielding, number 5. Jesse Hart, number 6. John Ryder, number 7. James DeHale, number 8. Fedor Chudinov, number 9. Avni Yildirim, number 10. Right? And then you start getting Jurgen Bremer, Vincent Feigenboots, Caleb Plant, Arthur Abraham. Now, the top 15 are all better than the guy Billy Joe Saunders is fighting.
Yeah.
And any of them, literally. Caleb Plant, Abraham, even Bremer is still a better fight. And so you do have to question the WBO's rankings and their...
Is that the February's rankings or January's rankings?
It's just BoxRec's rankings. I believe it's February.
The WBO's top 15 here in front of me.
Oh, I was just looking at BoxRec. Like, I didn't want to look at WBO because I know their rankings are terrible. It's all people you've never heard of.
Yeah. Carry on.
Yeah, well, that's it. No, you tell us. Go on. It would be great to know. But
number 1 is that Shefat Ifsi guy who he's fighting. 2, Jesse Hart. 3, Eric Banizayan, I've never heard of.
No.
Rohan Murdoch from Australia. Zach Parker, who I know, obviously. Chris Eubank Jr. at number 6. 7, Zach Dunn. 8, Jurgen Bremer. 9, Arthur Abraham. 10, Emmanuel Marty. 11, As Salamek Igor, I can't pronounce his name. Mate Kiss at number 12. 13, Patrick Ruckle. 14, Roma Alexis. 15, Adios, I can't pronounce his name.
Yeah, so half of them we've never heard of. Like, literally, the only couple of guys on there, Arthur Abraham and Zach Parker. What the fuck has Zach Parker done to get that high up in the WBO?
God knows.
He's not even on the BoxRec. Like, I don't think he's even in the top 50. Let's have a look. Let's type in Zach Parker, because that would be very interesting. Zach Parker, he's 30th. BoxRec have got him at number 30.
Okay. But Jesse Hart should have been next in line. I know he lost last time, but he should have been next in line to fight Billy Joe for this fight. But it's only because Billy Joe was champion at middleweight is the only reason why he's got this title shot.
Well, WBO's weird. So when you have been world champion, or you are currently world champion, or you've been stripped in a weird manner like he was, when you move up, you're still number 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the division. So yeah, it is weird. Nah, it's stupid, but it makes some sense because you've got people like Manny Pacquiao or people like Usyk, right? And when they move up, you don't want them to have to fight a guy ranked number 15. Because they're good enough to fight number 1. I think personally you should be put in the top 5. You shouldn't just be put #1 straight away. I think that's where it's a bit stupid, yeah.
But the problem is, there's enough people in that top 15 for him to have that title reign for 4 years, and he doesn't have to fight anyone good. He can just fight average people.
Oh, he won't though. He won't though, because Billy Joe Saunders is he's a crazy cat, and I know he wants to fight. There's 3 or 4 guys he wants to fight. Eubank Jr. just to shut Eubank Jr. up again. Canelo, GGG, Danny Jacobs, possibly DeHale, and maybe Callum Smith as well. I think those are the fights he's looking at, where he's like, those are good fights. They'll be for world titles and they'll be for big money. And so I think seeing him fight the likes of Caleb Truax or Fedor Chudinov, I don't think we're going to see that. But you might see, like, after he's had a tough fight, you might see him have an easy defense against like a John Ryder or someone like Rocky Fielding, someone like that.
But apparently, from what I read in interviews, they said that Dominic Ingle said that he could fight at 154 if he wanted to. You know,
yes, easily. He struggles to make 160 a little bit, but I've always thought Billy Joe Saunders, his frame, he's quite a small middleweight, and he's just got so much skill that honestly, kind of like Andre Ward, he could probably go up even to light heavyweight. Probably.
I think his best weight is middleweight, personally. I really do.
I think his best weight is middleweight, or he might even be better at 154. But he's good enough. He's good enough to get away with 168. And I think even when he's like 35 and older, I think he could even get away with 175 if it'd be pushing it, but he could just about do it. He's that good.
The problem is, he's only gone up to super middleweight because there's a vacant title. I think that's the only reason he's gone up. And
actually, I think there's 2 reasons. I think another part of it is, if you know Billy Joe Saunders, he does actually have to come down to make middleweight. So I think because he's been out of the ring so long and not had any big meaningful fights, the way it's worked out is this fight is a good fight for him to come down, get in shape, get to super middleweight, and then they can have a look for his next fight, whether he wants to go to 160 again. I actually think it's a good idea, because if you look at his last fight, he weighed in very heavy.
Did you see his last fight? I didn't get to see
it. Against Charles Adamu or something. I think he weighed in very heavy. Let me check. Billy Joe Saunders weight, Charles Adamu. I don't think he was light. 178 pounds.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so I actually think this fight, as much of anything, is like a get in shape fight. Come down to 168, he'll be in better shape, and then come down again to 160. That's my guess.
Okay.
That's my guess, because he looked very heavy. He's been out of the ring for such a long time. I think it's smart not to force him down to 160 so quickly.
My only concern is that I just hope the WBO, treat him better this time. I really do. And don't strip him for no silly reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole odd situation. I personally think the Massachusetts, it was Massachusetts, the Board of Control there, they are, from what I understand, Frank Warren has sued them. And I think they're going to lose that, because they enforced rules that weren't their own, basically to please one side of the fight contract. It was very peculiar. I'd need to look it all up again, but from what I remember, Massachusetts follow WADA with a W, and they enforced VADA's rules, and there's nothing in their code of conduct or their sort of policies that state that they would ever enforce VADA's rules when they're a WADA organization. So it's all very complicated and confusing, but it does look like Billy Joe Saunders and Frank Warren have a good legal argument there as to probably suing the Massachusetts board out of existence, because the kind of money, the damages they would have cost Billy Joe Saunders is more money than a single state athletic commission in America has to pay. So it's probably a very bad move by them. I hope they got rewarded sufficiently for making such a decision.
Andre got given a gift, didn't he? And that's the way I look at it.
Basically, yes. If the fight had been happening in the UK or Europe or any other, well, even in Massachusetts, it should have taken place because he didn't break any of the rules that were being enforced on the fight. He broke a voluntary doping test, which is the only organization that has such strict rules, and none of the organizations that were involved in the actual fight or the governing policies of the fight had those rules. It's complicated, it's messy, but I think it's very likely Billy Joe Saunders will win that case. But it doesn't help him really, does it? You can win some money, but when you lost your title, it feels a bit bitter, doesn't it? Like, even if you win that court case, it doesn't bring your world title back. It doesn't do anything of the sort. So, interesting for definite, and it's good to see him back in a world title fight. It's going to give him a good bargaining chip. If he's got the WBO 168 title, I think he can move down and demand a mandatory shot at the 160 title as well. So he may be thinking retroactively about it that way. So there's a whole load of reasons why it's a good thing. Obviously, seeing him fight at a heavier weight will be interesting, but good luck to Billy Joe Saunders. I think he'll win that fight very comfortably.
He deserves all the success he gets.
Sure. I mean, obviously, he did some stupid things last year, and he made some stupid mistakes. Everybody knows that. Everybody saw that. But I think some of that comes out of frustration. Some of that comes out of just ignorance and stupidity. And hopefully he's learned his lessons and he moves on. Because if he gets in the big fights, I think we'll see the best of him. And I really think everybody wants to see the best of him, because the best for him. Because he's an odd guy, but at the end of the day, he's an incredible athlete. He's got kids to feed and look after, and a family to grow. So, yeah, good luck to Billy. Hope he does well. Let's discuss the Eubank, the Hale card. Now, it's interesting because it's a good segue, because the winner of this is very likely going to fight Billy Joe Saunders for that title. What do you think about that?
I think possibly, yeah. But I'd advise Chris Eubank Jr. not to do it.
Agreed. If he wins, he should duck Billy Joe Saunders. Agreed. I agree.
I think he should go back and
before we start
further down the card, Sebastian Eubank is on the card against a guy called Richard Harrison, who's got 3 wins and 32 losses.
So is Sebastian Eubank the one that?
No, not the son, not the illegitimate son. He's a cousin of Chris Eubank Jr.
Okay, so they get on, because one time I remember very well. Is it Harlem Eubank who's the? No, it's another guy, isn't it? He's not actually called Eubank, and I remember he was supposed to fight. It wasn't Nick Blackwell. It was Tommy Langford. Eubank Jr. was supposed to fight Tommy Langford. No. This was before Tommy Langford lost, right? And they pulled Eubank Jr. out of the purse bids because Frank Warren had signed the illegitimate son of Chris Eubank Sr. and wanted him on the card.
Yeah. I've forgotten his name. I've now forgotten his name.
No, not Harlem. I can't remember.
Sebastian or something.
That's it. But I can't. And there's a load of them. There's a load of Eubanks under different names as well. Chris Eubank Sr.'s illegitimate son.
He looks just like him. Whether the other sons don't look like Chris Eubank. Yes, he looks just like Chris Eubank Sr. Got on his bed.
Yeah. Nathaniel Wilson.
Yeah, that's it.
Nathaniel Wilson.
Is he still boxing?
Don't know. Let's look him up. Nathaniel Wilson.
He got knocked out in one round about a year ago.
Oh, I see that by a guy who weren't that good himself. Yeah, he is still boxing, but he's boxing. The last fight he had was a guy who was 0-17.
Oh. So we did say about 2 years ago this guy never had the talent.
Yeah, he didn't. He didn't. I remember that. I remember well, and that's why I never really followed him. Like, good luck to him too, but he's not a boxer. He's already 30.
But he's fighting a guy with 16 losses and 17 losses. One guy in his and he beat him. Oh, joke.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. He drew with Josh Thorne, a guy who had 5 losses and 1 win. It's not good from Nathaniel Wilson, but yeah, I remember that. And then, so Frank Warren signed this guy, right? I remember this, and he was put on the Tommy Langford card, and that is when the Eubanks pulled out of the Tommy Langford negotiations for Perstage, and they didn't want to fight for the British title anymore. All because he'd been put on the same card. And it was like, I think Frank Warren did that on purpose to get an easy British title shot for Tommy Langford.
I've got a theory about Chris Eubank Jr. Because his dad is so crap with money, and his dad, I reckon he's having to rebuild his dad. His dad's probably making him box, to get the fortune that he lost.
I think that's possible, but if you actually look at Eubank Senior, like he is stupid with his money, but he did buy houses and he did buy stuff he can sell. He's not broke. He's not skint. And also he can he could still basically, if he wanted, he could like write a book about his career and go on speaking tours around the US. He's always got ways to make money, Eubank Senior. So I don't think he's forcing Junior to fight. From all the stories I've heard, he really didn't want his son to fight.
But the thing is, I'm surprised Chris Eubank Jr.'s got as far as he's ever got, considering he had it easy growing up. That's the impression I get. Where does it come from, this drive? Because I don't know.
Well, it's not that. I suppose it's weird, but it's also genetic. I mean, how do footballers' sons grow up to be great footballers? Sometimes you'd think they don't have the drive. Why are they going to training every day? Sometimes it's just genetic. Like, Eubank Jr.'s definitely got a genetic gift to boxing because he didn't have a trainer. He didn't have an actual boxing trainer, and he got as far as he did with no trainer.
But doesn't it tell you something? If he'd listened to people a decade ago, he would have been world champion by now.
True, but he also wouldn't be who he is. If he'd have listened to people 10 years ago, he wouldn't be who he is. He couldn't. Everybody does it how they're going to do it, and I think he's finally learned he does need a trainer. I'm really excited to see him fight in this fight, but I'm not optimistic. I'm interested, but I'm not optimistic.
I don't really like Miguel much. I'd much rather Eubank win because I think he's got another 3 or 4 years, another 5 years left in his career.
I would much rather De Hale. I want the best man on the night to win, but I think if De Hale boxes as beautifully as he can, I think I'd want him to win because it's just better for the actual art of boxing. Eubank Jr. is a good fighter, but obviously De Hale's got the jab, De Hale's got the footwork. But it's an interesting fight. De Hale's aging, obviously. Everybody knows the story. Eubank Jr. is wild and untrained. De Hale is aging and probably slipping off a little bit, and so it's just an interesting crossroads. But you wanted to go,
even though they're both the same age. De Gale you would have thought he was about 38. The way how long he's been fighting, when he's not even old.
That's very true. De Hale has a long, hard career of many tough fights. Porky Medina, George Groves, Butte, Andre Durrell. It's a lot. He's had a lot of fights and a lot of wars, and he turned some fights that he could have won easily into wars, which wasn't smart. So he took some years off his own career. He did doing that, and
if he's smart, if there's anything if there's anything of to go left, it will be too much for Chris, won't it? You would have thought so.
You would hope so. That's kind of what I'm expecting. But so we have discussed this fight to the death, but there is another fight on the card that I did want to discuss with you. Obviously, Joyce versus Stavern for the Commonwealth heavyweight title.
Great fight.
We both got Joyce winning that in a. Well, I've got him in like a mid to late round stoppage.
I'd say round 8 or 9.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. 7, 8, 9, something like that. He'll catch up to Stavern.
But Stavern still has power. We can't deny that. Yeah.
He does, but Joe Joyce is too big to knock out. I think maybe someone like Wilder with very quick power, surprising power, could knock out Joyce, but not someone like Stavern where it's bludgeoning power. I think Joe Joyce is used to that, really.
The only thing I'm worried about in this fight is I just hope that Joe Joyce doesn't end up like what Tony Thompson did to David Price. That's the only thing they've got in the back of my mind. I don't think it will happen, but there's a thought.
Joe Joyce is too big, man. Just go and look at his neck, his shoulders, and his head. David Price he's tall, David Price, but he was skinny and he was gangly and he had a big chin and a big neck. Joe Joyce is like the opposite. He's got like a big, wide jaw. You can't really budge him. Joe Joyce looks like a New Zealand rugby player.
If this was the Stavern of 3 years ago, I'd say it'd be close. But because Stavern has had a few beatings since then,
I agree.
But if this was Stavern 5 years ago, I'd have to pick Stavern to just about.
Yeah, if it was the Stavern who hadn't lost by knockout to Wilder, I would pick Stavern. No, I'd still pick Joe Joyce, but it'd be a very close fight. I'd say it was points, but because we've seen Wilder devastate Stavern, I think Joyce can eventually catch up to him. So,
how else does he got knocked on the deck by Derek Rossi about 3 years ago when he came back?
Yeah, he did, but he won. He came back and won that fight. I mean, it was kind of a flash knockdown. I don't know if that was. You can get knocked down if you get back up from it. That's not too bad. It's the ones where you get iced cold that really leave a mark. Like, for example, that knockdown that Steve Cunningham got on Tyson Fury, it doesn't really mean much now. It meant something for a split second in that fight, but when you look back on it, it was...
To be fair to Sven, he's former world champion. Do you know what I mean? You've got to give him the respect for that.
Well, sure, and you've got to give Joe Joyce a lot of respect for stepping up and fighting a former world champion for the Commonwealth title in his 8th fight. It's a good fight for sure.
We needed this fight. We wanted him to have this fight 3 fights ago, didn't we?
Sure. I think Joe Joyce, kind of like Lomachenko, can be rushed early, but you saw what happened to Lomachenko when they rushed him too fast. He lost, and so I think we were probably calling for it too soon. I think it's probably the right time, and as long as he keeps stepping up from here, I'll be happy to watch his fights.
What happens from here for Joe Joyce is, because of this WBA situation, I think now the Miller's moved over and Trevor Bryan, I think he'll either fight Manuel Charlo, Trevor Bryan win it. I can see that happening. He can fight one of them. That's why I don't know.
That would Whoa. That would be weird, seeing him fight for a world title in his 9th.
Nah, not if it's the lower champions, the interim or regular.
I know, but still, seeing him as a world champion within 9 fights would still be weird, because...
It would be, yeah. But
it's still an odd thing, but I get what you mean. It wouldn't be out of the ordinary or out of place for him to fight Trevor Bryan. I think that's a fight he could win. I think that's a fight they should really look for.
Well, they should look for him to fight Manuel. It makes more sense. He's never going to get a world title any other way, is he? We have to be honest about it.
Manuel, yeah, those are good options for him.
Derek Chisora,
I've heard Derek Chisora is going to be fighting Joseph Parker, so that's the last thing we will touch on quickly before I go and eat my food. Parker, Chisora, let's see, is there any more news on that? Tight deadline, two days ago, so It looks like April 20th. It's happening. David Higgins put tight deadline on the Joseph Parker versus Derek Chisora deal. Joseph Parker's promoter David Higgins warns they will pull the pin on April's proposed London fight with Chisora if a contract doesn't materialise very quickly. Maybe it's not happening then because they gave it like a 24-hour deadline.
I think it's a bad fight for Chisora to come back from anyway, with the loss he's had, and it would be a tough fight for Parker.
It would be a good fight for both of them, I think. I know what you mean. It's a tough fight for Chisora, but watching what Dillian Whyte did to Parker, I think Chisora could do a similar job. And he could win it. He could get knocked out. I mean, it's a good last payday fight, though, isn't it?
But either way, Parker, if he loses, his career is effectively over as a top.
If Parker lost, it is over because you can't lose to AJ, White, and Chisora in a row. That's you've gone backwards very far at that point.
He has come back and won a fight. He did have a fight about 3 months ago, and he came back and he come back in December.
I know, but you still know what I mean. Like, if you lose to Chisora, you are British gatekeeper level. You're not
Did
even.
You also hear about Lucas Brown? He's fighting Kamil Solowski in a couple of weeks.
He might get knocked out,
Oh, you know what? Kamil Solowski wins that, he could put himself in. He'll be in the world rankings.
Tell you what, man, Sokolowski is a weird guy, and he's terrible. He's lost a lot of fights, right? But he's coming off two. It's not the same Sokolowski.
Yeah,
is it the same? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he knocked out Nick Webb, didn't he?
Yeah. And yeah.
And that's it. That's all he's ever done. He knocked out Nick Webb, and he's got a fight with Lucas Brown. He's gonna get smashed up. Poor guy. Poor guy.
But then again, not Dave Howe. What's his face? He's fighting Lucas Brown. He's fighting Dave Allen, isn't he, too?
Maybe. If he's fighting Sokolowski, maybe not, because that's sort of at the time he was supposed to be fighting Dave Allen, so that might be dead in the water.
He's taken it very easy in his comeback, Lucas Brown, very easy.
Very. Julius Long, 18 and 20. Junior Patty, 12 and 22. Kamil Sokolowski, 6 and 14. He's going to get a world title shot with the WBO if he keeps it up at this rate, isn't he? He's going to get a world title shot with the WBO. Oh.
Anyway, we better finish up because you're...
Yeah, it's all kicking off around me, mate. So we'll wrap it up for here, and I'll come back to you very soon.
All right, cheers, mate. Thanks for inviting me.
Peace, bro. Peace.